Well, first of all, thanks a lot for coming to Dublin, for coming to Ireland. It's the second time that the Cristina De Middel comes to Ireland. The first one was not long ago, but long enough, in 2013, in the context of the PhotoIreland Festival, just about when the Afronauts were about to conquer the world, and in a very particular context, and or at least at a moment where we were experiencing this way of working, this way of thinking in terms of arts practice. So we are delighted that we can now bring to Ireland Journey to the Centre, and that your journey to the centre has been not complex, and yeah, that we can bring this again, to the to Ireland. I suppose one of the things that we wanted to look maybe in relation to the text that is in Original 5, because technically, or maybe I'm wrong, but you haven't released many texts over your career as a journalist, photojournalist. So why now? Or why
I mean, why now? First of all, thank you for having me again in Ireland. I'm very happy to be treated with a platform like this, and using this space and center brand new, almost brand new. So I'm very happy, and also to meet again in very different context, and to you too. And to answer your question, I don't like writing very much. I mean, I use writing because I need to it's a tool for me, and many times, and I do have a diary and so on, a journal, but I don't feel comfortable with sharing what I write. It's something that I do for myself. I consider the writing practice something very, very, very private to me, and I'm kind of ashamed of people reading what I write, because I think and probably that's the reason why I chose photography as a language, is because it's nuanced and everybody can interpret it in a very open and free way, whereas text, there's a dictionary that actually says what the words mean. So you have like a basis of meaning that is impossible to change, and that is impossible to change the future, and I really like to change my mind. So in photography, I consider, or I feel that I have the freedom to just contradict myself if I want. In 20 years, change the version of what the Afronauts is about, why not? But with the text, I find it very complicated. So that's why I keep it for me. And in this case, this is a text that I wrote really because I needed to write something. It was right after the crossing of the border with there's the pictures at the very end of the wall at the end that are like a line, and it's the migrants crossing the desert at night. So that was, I think, one of the most intense points in all the process of the project, and it was dangerous, and it was a lot of things happened. The context behind these images is something I would never tell my mother, because it was like, what are you doing that? But I think it's the first time that I am touched with the topic and the theme that I am talking about. I've had been very successful with keeping the distance and just, looking things from outside. That time it was impossible. And I remember I was flying back, like it took me some time to digest. I was really, really touched by what was happening there, and I just wrote. And I wrote on the iPad and kept that text. And then maybe 3-4 years later, you came, this exhibition became a thing, and you asked me to contribute with a text. And I was like, a text? It's like the only thing I have is this, but I haven't read it in 4 years, and I don't know. So, and it's also not a text that is meant to explain anything. It's more to contain the emotions and what I was feeling at the time. So it's a bit, I feel very exposed with this text, to be honest.
I mean, it is quite personal. It's also quite direct. It's called 16 Minutes of Darkness. And it narrates what happens in those 60 minutes. But what are these 60 minutes?
So these 16 minutes are, so in the context, I went to Sonora. So the only thing I was missing in the project after 6 years, was actually the crossing. So I had taken pictures of people like jumping the wall and so on, but I had never crossed the desert with them, and I knew that it was the most important part of the project because that's where they die. A lot of people die in that journey. So I really wanted to do that part, but I had been postponing it because the place where they were crossing is Altares in the state of Sonora. It's, of course, controlled by the cartels, and the cartels were fighting against each other because I don't know what. So every time I planned to go and program everything with my fixers, like, no, not this month, next month, no, next month, so next month. And then, like, 3 years passed, and I was already working on the book, I was already working on different things, and I needed to do it. So my last shot was to go in May 2021 or 2022, I can remember very well. It was like, no matter what, we're going. So nobody wanted to take us to the border. Normally you just pay and you take a minimal risk and you go with someone from the cartels in exchange for money, and they protect you and they let you take pictures as long as you don't show their faces. When I went there, nobody, not one cartel, not the other, wanted to take the risk of bringing a gringo there, because it was very dangerous.
But we're talking about in a vehicle, right? In a car.
Just to let you witness the crossing.
Okay.
Normally it can happen in very different ways. Normally you just jump in the van with them, and then you drive with them and you walk and they take you back, something like that. But nobody wanted to do that. We still went. We've managed to find a van, a guy that just. So it was all, it was dangerous, and I shouldn't have done it. But then it was, I think, so dangerous that my fixer got very nervous, and he simply passed out during that night. He took some pills and some alcohol, and at the time we were supposed to be stopping the vans to jump in. He was not, he was just on the floor. So I still decided to go, and the guy who had rented the van, we just stopped a van in the middle of the dusty road, and we jumped in. And it was really, because you have a picture there, the van is packed with migrants. Like, I am here, in the car, and there's a guy here with the AK-47 like this. The driver is snorting cocaine like if there was no tomorrow, and speeding in the dusty road to get to the border. And I was like, fuck. Anything can happen. And it was just 16 minutes. Getting in the van, speeding to the border, crossing the border, walking with them, and the pictures there are where they are just aligned and standing in line to just cross. And you see, it's total darkness, and these people, and most of all, the people who are in charge of guiding them, you see that it's never going to work, that it's totally like a death trap. And then, I took some pictures, and I was working with a manual focus camera at night with no light at all. And there was just this friend who was the guy who accepted to drive us to the border. I asked him to hold a torch. So he was holding a torch for me, and I was with the Leica and taking pictures. And it was 16 minutes, but I was totally in shock when I came back for, all the, accumulated stress. And, this is the kind of battles like the photojournalist battle. Let me tell you what happened in the border that I hate, that I really don't like to be told. Don't forget I'm in Magnum, and there's quite a lot of that. So I try to avoid it myself, and it's not something that I talk about unless. That's why I feel exposed.
Well, we thought it was a great opportunity to share a bit more about the context of the work, because maybe there's a sense of that attachment between the process of migration and your experience as a photojournalist, and I thought that was quite important to share. And maybe I think we were talking earlier about where the actual idea came from, and the title. I think.
So it started. Yeah.
I was going to say I was quite obviously the title itself slightly reveals itself through the image, but on a personal note, I was actually reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea recently, because someone had recommended of us those, you know, that writing that was coming out at the time, like Wells and Verne and all of these people almost looking at these kind of assault of technology, the kind of plight of people at the time, at that kind of late, you know, Victorian 20th century. And it was kind of the idea, maybe if you could chat about what those thoughts of the likes of writers of Verne in that time period, maybe what drew you back specifically to those kind of ideas of Verne and other writers.
I think it was not precisely the ideas of Verne. It was how I associated Verne with the adventure and the hero novel. So I was interested in the heroic dimension of Verne's character. Also Jules Verne, like I think it was the Around the World in 80 Days. Yeah. That was the first thick book that I read myself. I remember that my father gave it to me, and I felt very proud to read a thick book. And so it has this you know, link, very emotional link for me. Jules Verne is like, but it happened because I found the center of the earth. Yeah. And that's when everything made sense. It's not that I was thinking about Jules Verne. Yeah. I found the center of the world, which is Felicity, and you can see the pictures there, which is a place at the border between Arizona, California, and Mexico. And by finding the center of the world, then Jules Verne's come, and then I understand that I can use it for something that I was really trying to figure out how to do, is change the perception of migration, change the perception of migrants that are 99% of the time presented as victims or as criminal, people you should feel pity for or be fearful of. And I wanted to see if I could present them in a way that you could feel admiration. Yeah. So by finding the center of the world, then next thing I did was download on my Kindle Journey to the Center of the World and start, you know, marking the sentences that I could extract from the book and apply them to the migration route. Yeah. And that's how I started building the structure of it. And that was in 2015. And I finished shooting in 2022, 23, something like that. I don't remember. It took me like 8 years.
I think something that struck me, and it's obviously a very generous text, and we obviously feel very grateful that we've published it, is the length of time that the project has been on with that text. You're drawn into a specific 16-minute time period. You're drawn into a very singular experience for each migrant. And I know within the work you show, I think there's a map there, and you can see the red dots, and even the map itself goes, this dot may represent more than one individual. So there's something within the work as well that comments maybe on the length of time of these migratory process, but you're constantly, whether it's in the text or within these individual images, you're drawn back to these kind of almost singular experiences that are in there. And I think that's something that's just really powerful within the work, is that you don't lose sight of that, even though there's the way things are catalogued and categorized, there's always an anonymity that exists within there. Speaking then maybe to that, of were there moments maybe within those images where some of those singular experiences were more challenging to present or easier to present, or do you just almost need to do that anyway?
I think like the big challenge, I mean, there were different things that I needed to address and I needed to be careful with. First of all, I'm not Mexican. And I'm Spanish, and I don't know if you're familiar with the history we have, Mexico and Spain. We owe them a lot of gold. Yeah. So there is that. So it's not the most comfortable environment for me to work, and also to categorize things. Also, my work is very much about stereotypes. So for me, what was really a challenge was to try to compensate the amount of stereotype that I needed to get the attention of people, with not simplifying things and not making fun of things. So that's why, I mean, I tried to create images that had like two layers always, like they were like maybe funny but sad, relaxing but violent, that you don't know how to feel with images. So that was a challenge, and I don't know, I was not very sure of what the reaction was going to be, because it was how I felt it. Yeah. And I was, I guess, relieved when the exhibition happened in Arles precisely, and there was a lot of people who, I mean, I think it's the first time like a lot of people was crying. You know, people were crying, and a lot of Mexican people wrote to me and so on. So that was like, okay, if even Mexican people that are, you know, tired of getting news about this can somehow connect with my vision of it, I guess, I mean, I was happy with that. Yeah. But it's difficult, and you never know, and sometimes you might just go way off the line and do something that is totally unacceptable, and you don't know until you made that mistake. You still have to take the risk.
You, as a photojournalist as well as an artist, I always feel when I look at your projects that you get so heavily invested in them, and this has been a huge part or something that you've worked on. You never obviously want to say a project is over, but maybe compared to other ones, you feel this is one might be harder, maybe emotionally, to view it as, again, over, as they'd say.
Yes, I mean, I think it was, you know, it took me like 7 years to do it, and in the 7 years, I started because Trump became president, and it was this feeling of urgency, like we need to talk about this, and then he stopped being president, and I was like, okay, I will still finish it. Just in case. Yeah. And the just in case actually happened because Trump is again president, and the problem has, you know, magnified. It's even more important to address. So for me, the projects, I mean, I could have continued shooting for 3 or 4 years. No problem at all. I still have a lot of things in my notebook to photograph, and I could keep pulling the thread more and more and more and more. But I mean, at least for me in my practice, what sets the end of projects is deadlines. When somebody wants it and needs it and have the opportunity. And then if it's still there and I still feel there's things to do, I would do a second chapter, I don't know. But I also wanted to move on, also because in all that time I was living in Mexico, but I moved to Brazil, so it was more and more complicated for me to just react quickly to things that were happening in Mexico. And I just stopped shooting.
In this work in relation to looking at photography and the role of photography in creating stereotypes, I think it's worth commenting about an exhibition that is currently on in the Netherlands, and I think in South Africa as well.
And in Bangladesh.
From the World Press Photo, which is entitled "What Have We Done?" And we're talking about this last night in relation to the curatorial freedom, I suppose, that they have given you to access their archive. And so, what have you done?
I have done. I mean, I've had. Probably one of the most interesting and exciting curatorial projects that I ever had, because I love archives and I use them myself in my work a lot. And this is probably the archive that I was more curious about, because, you know, in my own evolution as a photographer, I was like, you know, I went from worshipping WordPress Photo to questioning it, to being really angry at WordPress Photo, to now acknowledging the value that the archive has and how much information it gives about who we are as a society and what we are as an industry. So being invited to that was like, me? Like, are you sure? So I really appreciated the fact that the team trusted me and they wanted to take the risk, because in the end it is a risk. I'm not someone that is, you know, pleasing the photojournalistic environment. I respect it and I think it's extremely necessary, but I'm not, you know, like, you know, and there's many things in photojournalism in the environment that I strongly disagree with, and with the personalities as well. So giving me that power to look at their archive with total freedom was like, okay, but then I have to roll my sleeves and propose something that makes sense. So I actually just continued the research they had started themselves, where they were like sort of keywording their archive, you know, looking at everything, all the images they could find in their physical and also digital archive, categorizing them. And it's a work that a curator, like an archivist, had started. And I just took that, started again, looked at everything, and came up with maybe, I think it's 7 or 8 tropes, families, of patterns that were repeating, that every year you find the same thing, this and this and this, whether it is aesthetical choices and composition, or topics or certain characters.
Could you give us an example?
Yes, we have women weeping.
Women weeping.
Versus men saving.
Men saving?
Yes. So in a lot of pictures you have, like when there's action, when there is a conflict, the woman always has like a passive victim role, and the man is always in a heroic position saving. You only see men weeping when they are soldiers, because we really want to humanize soldiers, so you forget about the fact that they just killed someone, you know? Except soldiers are emotional and they are weeping if they are white, because if they're not white, they're normally aggressive and violent. So you have all these things that intertwine, and then for me it's, the things, the bias that you think exists, it's like, oh, the same. But when you see it really, like for real, in repetition of images, it's crazy. It's like, okay, it's not that I was paranoid or that I was, biased or angry at them. It's really what's happening. And the funny thing is that it's not an exhibition that is there to blame photographers, to blame WordPress photo, it's to blame everyone. It's not to blame anyone and everyone at the same time, because if the photographer shoots this image, it's because the publication probably asked them that angle, or he knows that if he shoots this image, it's more likely that it will be published. And if he edits in this specific way, it's more likely that he will get an award, because the jury will want to, it's a like ecosystem that retrofeeds. And this exhibition is just to explain what are the dynamics in this ecosystem, so we can, decide what to do about it. Maybe we just stay there, because it's not that photography has invented dynamite. The fact that women are weeping and men saving is not, specific to photography. You can find it in classical painting. It's not. So we just inherited certain, iconography and roles that we feel comfortable with. Things that we feel comfortable with. It. Whatever challenges these roles is striking. Another one, for example, is there is a lot of close-ups of dark skins. Like whenever there's dark skin, you get a close-up. So you get the crispiness of the skin, as if there was, this fascination for dark skin. And not only by white photographers or Western photographers, also black photographers do that. But you don't get any close-up of white skin. You get close-ups of dark skin. And then this one, I couldn't include it because it was not so significant, but probably is my list in the Excel that had more input was horses. There's a lot of horses.
Beautiful horses.
Amazing horses. Like beautiful horses. And men with horses. Which you also find in painting. You don't find chicken. You find horses.
They're usually there that you can hang it upside down. But it's very interesting to I suppose to have this process of self-reflection and to propose the WordPress photo to take responsibility as much as to us as perhaps viewers or consumers, or to think about this, because we think about how AI may be accessing these archives and what AI may be learning, and how dangerous it is. We are learning, and we have been exposed to this and more, I suppose. Mm-hmm. There's a pattern, I suppose, that you need to stop, and you need to kind of like question, and you need to reflect on. So I think it's a very interesting curatorial project, and so it's very exciting. I hope we have somehow the chance to bring it to Ireland, and I wish there was a publication, because I think it's very interesting.
I think there will be a publication at some point, but WordPress Photo is not used to doing exhibitions like this. Mm-hmm. They're used, they're a machine where they do their exhibitions with the winners and then they tour it and so on. It's the first time that they do something that is more in depth, and that is probably, appealing to other type of audience, to a different type of audience. So I think they're figuring it out, and it's also not a project that it's relevant this year. Next year it will be the same, and the next year. Yes. So it will age well, and we can wait. And the publication will certainly come. For now, they made a newspaper that is not bad with all the text and so on. But I think I agree it deserves a publication. They haven't found a publisher yet.
Well, I'm sure in the Netherlands somebody will come forward.
I was curious maybe if you could, when you were accessing that archive and almost seeing those tropes and seeing those ones, without being too self-critical, were there moments when you kind of maybe identified things that within your own work, and do you think that maybe even when it came to say selecting or editing a long body of work like this, what kind of impact maybe obviously as practitioners engage with archives, and then how we can maybe have an influence maybe either photographing or then maybe selection choices? Was there any that jumped out to you?
Yes, I think myself I did all that. I think, for example, if you learn how to paint, you normally take the models of other paintings and Greeks and the classics and so on. In photography, you do the same. Like, how do you know photography is good or bad when you're starting?
Yeah.
The more it resembles to Salgado, Natway, or Steve McCurry, the better it is. That's the reference. Like, it's like that. So myself also, I had different periods. I had the McCurry period, then the Natway, and then the Martin Parr, and then I killed my idols and I did something, I guess, a bit different. But it is the academia of and the WordPress photo is certainly, the base where where you go, the well where you go to drink when you're starting, and also when you're still in the business.
Yeah.
I moved myself from there deliberately to have a critical look at it. But if you look at my archive in the beginning, it's exactly that.
Yeah.
So of course I recognize myself, and I like that, because I think you have to overcome these things.
Yeah.
You cannot be against something that you haven't experienced deeply. That's how real change happens.
Maybe as we open it, perhaps to any questions from the floor, just one in relation to Magnum, in relation to being a member of Magnum and becoming the president of Magnum. I think I read somewhere in an interview in relation to when you became president, that this was the first time that you became president of anything.
No, it was the first time I was the president of anything, and also the first time, I was not even a member. So how Magnum works is, before you become a member, before you go through, all these stages of a nominee, associate, and then a member, it can take a minimum of 4 years and 2 votes. It took me 5 years. So I became a member on a Wednesday and president on a Friday, which means that I didn't have any experience of what being a member meant. And that means you can vote, you can be part of the board, you have access to, the backstage and the engine of the agency. Before that, you're just there, and they tell you, go there and take pictures. That's it. But you don't really know how it works. So I went from, not knowing how it goes to having to lead. And that was probably one of the hardest things I've done in my life.
Big shock, I suppose.
A big responsibility. Also, it was flattering. It's like, okay, all these people want to be led by me. Are you sure? But I had to learn very fast, especially Excel sheets. and I learned, and I think it's something that I learned a lot. I don't know if I would do it again.
Because recently, or not so recently, but you stepped down from.
Well, it's normally you do 2 years. I did 3 years, and I stopped being president in June of 2025, so last June, and I think I'm still recovering. But I did learn a lot, not only of the industry and how photography works and so on, but also things that I can really use for my career, of being more strategic, planify things. Before I was just responding to ecos and things. Now I can make a plan, because I had to learn how to make a plan, And I think I'm actually just reorganizing my studio and doing things and getting tools and so on. So I became, for me, what it feels like is that I became of age. So I became an adult.
All right.
Yeah. Before that, I was totally a teenager.
Wild and free.
Totally. Now I'm just an adult. I'm still free, but maybe I'm not as wild because I know the consequences.
But was it, I suppose, the same magnum that you had in mind? We talk about the killing the idols. Was some idol that was murdered, or?
I think it is like the idea that people have of magnum, you know, the ceremonial magnum, and how, you know, the authority with which people speak at Magnum about photography and so on. It's very interesting, and it totally, you know, corresponds to the expectations of what you see from the outside. But there is also a lot of, you know, very human pulsions within the agency that you can find in places that are not so revered. And for me, I think it's one of the comparisons that I made with Magnum is all the problems of the world. You have them in Magnum at the minimum scale, instead of having 15 countries align because they are, you know, supporting this or this cause. In Magnum, you have 2 or 3 photographers, and you have the same debates, the same. It's like a little UN with all the, you know, with the lobbies and the countries that do not obey, and the countries who want to change things, and it's very, very similar. And all the big debates I used to have when I was a photojournalist in Alicante, in my hometown, you know, we would just get after work, it's like, no, but photography black and white is so much better because, and then you would go until 3 a.m. talking about this and that. You have exactly the same thing, except that you're talking with Martin Parr. So it's like, that's the different thing. But it is a very, very interesting place. I just hope someone makes a series one day, or a case study
Of Magnum.
of Magnum. Yeah.
Internally.
Yes, something that could be published.
But it was, I suppose, you entering Magnum and Rafa Milach, you know, there was like a sense of like shifting or changing towards.
There is
new practices or new understandings of what.
There is. Yeah, I think that aesthetically and the understanding of photography has expanded. I mean, in Magnum it's changed drastically in the last, let's say, like maybe 10 years, 7, 8 years, like drastically. And then we still have these, you know, sometimes when it comes to voting for new members, new nominees and so on, saying, no, he cut the feet, and no, the horizon is not straight. And of course you have the older generation says like, oh, this is shit. You know? And then you have the younger generation say, but no, what is good, what is bad? And you know, it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. And you know, it's a bit like a family, that you know, whatever is said, at some point you will forgive, because you're family and you're going to be together for the rest of your life, so you'd better forgive. And it creates like a very generous dynamic in most of the cases, where when you say we have to agree to disagree, it's sometimes very tense, but in the end we do it. And you have, you know, very interesting conversations between photographers like Ian Barry and Lua Rivera, who are like, you know, probably on the opposites, and they agree. And they agree, and there is, you know, this care for, okay, we're in this together. So, and I think that's beautiful. All the intergenerational dialogue there is, aesthetic, you know, like how it's a room with, it's a house that is full of divas who think they are right, all dancing together, and having fun sometimes.
That's important. I don't know if anybody wants to throw a question there. No, we can maybe just one final thing to add, perhaps in relation to, I suppose, your future, where you are now in your practice, and what's next, and how do you see your practice going? You were talking about, I mean, you're not in Magnum anymore, so things have changed and things are going in a particular direction. So What's coming?
So I'm still in Magna. I'm just not the president, and I am since the end of June, like working very hard to simplify my life as much as possible, and you know, do only the things that I want to do, because I've been dedicated to doing things that I was not necessarily, you know, very fond of doing. So I'm now, you know, reconquering my freedom and my time and my rhythm, like everything that I needed to, that I thought I had to give to Magnum. So I'm simplifying as much as I can. I'm doing like a, you know, when you prune, so I'm pruning, and and I want to give also some time to photography for personal projects. So what I'm doing, the next project is moving image. It's a movie.
Like a full-length movie?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
I don't know. I know it's going to be a movie, and I know what it's about, and it's in Brazil, and I will just do it because a movie, it's like very big, and I don't want to. I've never done a movie. I've never directed anything, but I want to keep it under control. So I want to do something maybe more guerrilla style than a big production. So we'll see. And I start in February.
In February. Exciting.
I still don't have the money, so I hope I will get it.
Well, we're doing our best to sell some books here. Okay, we can.
Just double check, does anyone have a question that did?
Stephen?
Hi, Cristina.
Hey.
First of all, thank you so much for being here. I've actually a question more so about the ideas of exhibition making as an artist and as a photographer. As the books that you create are kind of indefinite in the sense that they have a beginning and an end as such, but the exhibition seems to be the space that you're able to kind of continue a dialogue. And as this is a new exhibition that's growing and continuously growing, and I read somewhere that you have 62 or 65 folders of work for this particular project. And after working on this exhibition myself, I've seen that there's also components that are not in the book, but also continuously grow. I'm curious to hear what you think and what your channels of exhibition making is, and how that is a continuous process in the delivery of the projects that will continue to grow. And to kind of bounce off Aidan's reaction of the ending of, say, an emotional process of 7 years of creating this work, that these are spaces that these things continue to grow and touch audiences, but also you, yourself. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about exhibition making.
I mean, with exhibitions, it's something that I have evolved myself a lot. In the beginning, I was just doing a translation of the book to the exhibition. In this case, it was more the opposite. I did the book, and making the book was a bit complex and I would say problematic. And I found that the exhibition that I did in Arles was actually the best way to tell the story. And the book is okay. It has much more information, as you say, it has a beginning and an end. But I think you feel much more at the exhibition than you do with the book. So what I try to do is to adapt, like make the best use of the space, which in each venue changes, and try to, tell the story in a way that using this specific space tells more and manages to connect more with the audience. So I redesign or adapt it to every venue, and sometimes because of the venue or because I feel closer to a certain image, I just change one and put another one and find, there's unlimited combinations. Like the folder, I have it's more than 60 something, it's almost 70 folders of raw material. The book and the exhibition folder is 3 times bigger because I keep all the combinations and so I can make endless versions of these, and I try to not to apply a formula to the space, and this is just get the exhibition, put it like this, and just move on. No, I try to adapt it to the space, and not only in size but also in parcours, in path. So for this space specifically, I mean, it was very different to the previous one that was at the Photographer's Gallery, where I was given 20 square meters to tell a story of 7 years, so that was quite challenging. And the previous to that one was Arles, when I had a church for myself. It had sound, it had, a church that already is like with nothing. You're supposed to get emotional just in a church. No? So I try to replicate that experience and adapt it to the new space. And I think it's in this case it works. I mean, we make the wall. The wall is very important. The separation of the two spaces of the two countries is unnegotiable in any space. And the rest, it depends on the space, how far you can go to see the image, how big I want it. And if I'm super honest, I am enjoying much more lately to think of exhibitions than to think of books. I find it much more rewarding. But don't tell the photo book lovers.
But I mean, it is very interesting how you are bringing the visitors into the same path of migration, and like at some point you realize, oh, I am actually part of this, and you have to go through the border yourself, and see your peers, coming with you on the bank, and then discovering what's in the other side that maybe wasn't the dream that was being presented to you. So there's almost like a sense of like performance, in the sense of bringing somebody through that process, regardless of whether they are aware or when they become aware of that process. But it is very playful, I suppose.
I think it could be reduced to something very minimal. Like you keep the wall with maybe the panoramic, and you put one picture on the Mexican side, one picture on the US side, and you still get it. Just need to find the right picture for each side, and there you go. You don't need to complicate things too much. So and I like that idea, that it's a project that can feel a church and also feel a corridor in a hotel if you want to.
Does anyone else have any questions that they'd like to ask? If I could just finish on one last one, Cristina. The last time when you were in Dublin presenting, I know we actually mentioned it last night, it was in a space that no longer exists, Moxie Studios, or Afronauts was shown in 2012?
Copper House.
Copper House. Sorry, apologies. You had a book when we had the book fair. My apologies. Just thinking now, coming back to Dublin and coming back to the space and the kind of change through it, and maybe that journey you've been over the last while, and it's more obviously just to shine a light on Helen and Julia and the space that they've created. Just maybe even just to chat about how you felt about the change, and maybe in Dublin and Ireland, and maybe photography maybe more closely to us rather than necessarily globally.
I mean, I think it's what is happening here. It's a very good sign of where photography is going and where photography is. It's also like a rara avis. It's not happening everywhere. So we have to thank people like Angela and Julia and all the team for putting the effort and keep fighting all these years to make something that goes beyond probably their personal interest. I've been working also, and if I compare Angela and me, like where we were 12 years ago, and now we look at ourselves like, not bad, but I've been working on myself, and he's been working on creating a platform to help others. So I think there's a big deal of gratitude that I hope people give to you and to you. And in terms of that, I think it's also very interesting that this is called the International Center for the Image, and I really think talking about the image, about the nature of the image, about the role of the image, the image is at the center of society at this point, and it is extremely dangerous to play with the image, and we're, like monkeys with machine guns at this point. So having a new space that is called International Center for the Image is full of hope, because I hope people will come here to improve their visual educations and be more prepared to navigate the society we are in. Hopefully, visual education can be included in curriculums, in school, and so many other things. So keep fighting, keep putting pressure on things. So thank you.
Insofar as thank you very much. Insofar as it relates to us and our team, I think I'm super thankful to my staff, that making the space happen, that open the doors and keeps it running, and to the technicians that build the exhibition. One of whom, Stephen, also built the exhibition or helped handle the exhibition in 2013 for the Afronauts. So it's kind of like coming back to the, to the same artist and supporting the artist in that way. But I've also thankful to Jules for coming today, and to the whoever may be listening this, if this has been recorded properly. And can enjoy this brief conversation as they walk around the exhibition space, perhaps. I'm very thankful to the Arts Council for giving us the funding that we received, even though we probably deserve loads more. Thankful for the opportunity that we have for having this space, and I think certainly for having Cristina De Middel here. I can see David wanted to rest up.
Just a quick question that came to me, like most things, my brain is a cloud. I was talking to a student, the next student of mine last night, who had got into a lot of trouble. He had photographed the Houses of Parliament. It was kind of like an official photographer, particularly during the Brexit.
This is Mark Duffy.
Mark Duffy. And I hadn't realised then, because I started to see some pictures in The Guardian or whatever, and I hadn't realised though that he was then subject, because he kind of pushed the boundaries in terms of using some of those images, and I hadn't realised he'd actually been raided then by the police.
Oh, yeah.
And wasn't quite the security services, but he was raided by New Scotland Yard, and they were searching his computer, his social media feeds, and he was definitely poking the bear a little with what he was doing with those images. So it just hit me there. I was wondering that, given the nature of what you're covering, have you encountered any kickback, particularly under the current administration, between they are targeting people? I was just curious, have you begun to feel any kind of...
Have you been to the US recently?
Honestly, I haven't been to the US recently. The last time I was in the US was in 2021, and if it can stay like that, I will consider it a success. I have zero intention to go to the US now, and zero interest. But I also think that I would love to show this in the US. So I'm also saying that I don't want to go, but at the same time trying to find a way to show it. Precisely yesterday, the Spanish ambassador in Ireland was here, and she told me, I put you in touch with the Washington embassy, because they have an exhibition space and they could do it.
And what about something very close to the border?
Yeah, that would be great.
Suzanne Marcellus, I think.
Yeah. Well, I don't. We'll see. Yes, no. I think more maybe in California it's easier because it's more open-minded, and also in Mexico.
Yeah.
So I'm working, but for now because in both in Mexico and the US, there's hardly any funding for exhibitions.
Yeah.
And the spaces are, very scared of what they are including in their programs now, because it's already difficult. So if they take risks, it's not everybody who's ready to make statements at this point.
Yeah.
So my hope now is with the Spanish embassy, because we are in a good moment.
It's a really clever way to bring this content into the United States at the Spanish embassy.
I mean, they're already unhappy with us. Let's just make the best of this.
Yeah.
We, to that point, David, we had two contributors who were based in America who contributed to issue 4. One was covering North African photographers from Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, and covering Western Sahara as well. But we also had a writer who was writing on their own experience of being in an American diaspora, and I remember chatting to them, and she was trying to find out when would it be published, when it would be available, because she was conscious that she would actually be travelling to Turkey and then having to return to America. And she was saying that, not necessarily maybe related to the content we had a discussion about how she was getting her feed ready to look through and to process and stuff like that. And it was probably something I don't think we did maybe experience with issue 1, 2 or 3, and both maybe through a combination of both the change in the world and maybe us casting the net a little bit further out and looking to First Nations and First Nation voices. But that was something that I know we discovered when we were doing it, trying to work out the logistics of when texts, which would be critical of, and then someone actually having to pass through the border and into there. So it was something that we probably were cognizant really when we were doing issue 4 and 5. So.
Well,
but on a more positive note. Thank you, Christine.
I say thank you
you.
to Aidan Murphy as well for joining us this morning, and certainly to Cristina De Middel. And once again, thank you very much.